You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the FLOWMASTer SCHWARTZ from CBOE. The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. Time for a little bit of action on everyone's favorite bi-weekly options extravaganza. Yup, we're talking about the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. Did you miss us? Of course, we were off for the MLK holiday on Monday, but back now on Thursday, ready and raring to go. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THE, OptionsInsider.com. as well as from the network upon which so many of you folks have been binging these days. If you like what you hear, hit this show, anything else we do, throw a like, a comment. You know the drill by now. All that stuff in aggregate does help new people continue to discover the content. Coming off the hottest year in the history of the business, or the history of the business and indeed of the network, so a combo. So if you want to keep that fun train rolling, all those stars, those likes and comments, they do help at the end of the day. And of course, if you want to join us for some extra fun, like pro Q&As, like options oddities, maybe some fun additional content, I'll talk about it in a second over there. Only one place to go, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to find out more. As we find out who's joining us on the old program today, first, let's go out to CBOE East, to our good buddy, the FLOWMASTer, a.k.a. Mr. Henry Schwartz, from the aforementioned CBOE. Mr. FLOWMASTer, welcome back to the show. It's been a wild and woolly 24 hours. Have you recovered from our exciting panel, sir?
I have. It was great to sit down with you in Chicago, even though it was 2 degrees below zero when I got there.
You picked a good time to come to Chi-Town, sir.
But I'm back back in New York where it's nice and safe, and we certainly have some interesting markets, so lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about indeed. If you want a sneak peek of that panel, maybe you want the full thing. I can't promise anything, but maybe someone may have surreptitiously snuck a recorder into said event. So it was myself, it was the FLOWMASTER, it was our buddy JJ Kinahan, formerly of TD Ameritrade, now holding court over there at IG Group, and the Meatballs buddy, Mr. Greg Magadine. He also flew in. Everybody flew in to frigid Chi-Town to talk a little bit of options yesterday. Man, we had a lot of fun. I haven't listened to the recording yet, that surreptitious recording that made its way to us, but we're going to get it up there for you folks over there on the Pro. So if you want to hear it for yourselves, a little bit of a fun bonus, head on over to theoptionsinsider.com/pro, where you folks can hear it once our editors get it all sorted out. Remember, it was a secret recording. Don't tell anybody. All right, and also joining us from the land of Texas. I don't know what's going on down there. Is it minus 20 like the rest of the world, or is it a balmy 72 degrees? Let's find out, because we are joined by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, are you folks freezing down in Texas as well?
Mark, we spent 3 days below 32 degrees.
Dang.
People were freaking out. This afternoon it'll be back in the 70s, though. So
did you have to flee to the shelters in town? How did that work?
Oh my, yeah. I mean, it was you needed cold shelters. Believe it or not, if you didn't run your water, people's pipes froze.
I believe it. I totally believe
they're
that.
not. These houses aren't built for sub-freezing weather down here. Because that doesn't usually happen. So, there was that, but. We're back in the good graces of the above 60s into the 70s, and all is well in the world here in deep in the heart of Texas.
And you know what? It's freezing in Chicago, but under the weather shield over there in St. Charles, it's always a balmy 72, where we are joined by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW. Mr. Uncle Mike, how thankful are you for that weather shield right now, sir?
If it existed, I'd be very thankful. But in the meantime, I'm suffering at the 23-degree mark like the rest of us.
You burst in my bubble of lies about St. Charles. So this is my deal with their tourism board. Now they're not going to cut me my quarterly check. What are you doing?
They were kind of mad at you when you said that we all had botulism and dysentery a few years back. They really haven't forgiven you for that.
It's been a few years since I've gone. I think it was rickets, if I do say so.
Oh, rickets.
Myself.
I'm sorry.
But yes, it's been a few years since I've made such claims. So, I think they've forgiven me. But now you're bringing it back up again. Let's hastily keep going, listeners, right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we do just that. We say, what the heck is trading out there? And it's another one of those days where things are kind of wishy-washy, kind of topsy-turvy. We seem to be battling it out around this 47.5 level in the markets right now. Do we want to rally, threaten 4,800 again? Do we want to start the sell-off, start threatening 4,700 again? Obviously, the bulls and bears locked in that dance. Right now, the S&P up slightly, a little over 0.05%. So hanging out a little bit shy of that 47.5 level right now. The Dow off about 0.25%, so leading the charge to the red today. NASDAQ still up about up about 0.5% out there right now. Let's look at our old friend small caps really quickly too. And small caps, I should amend that. Small caps taking the lead to the dark side now, off about 0.2%. Maybe we'll have more fun talking about some small caps a little bit later on TWIFO. Well, I'll be joined for the first time this year by Carly Garner. Should be a fun one there. That means all of our vol friends getting a little bit juicier since the last time we chatted on this show a week ago, listeners. VIX actually over the last 24 hours flirting with the 15 handle. I haven't seen that in a while. Got up to about 15 1/3 yesterday. Coming off that a little bit now, down to about 14.5. Still frothy, really. Still up about over 1.5, about 1.7 points from where it was a week ago. So gone, at least for right now, are the days of meandering around 12.5, 13. We're feeling a little bit more juice, feeling our oats out there in the vol space, at least a little bit. Things were low when we're getting excited about a 15 handle, but that's where we are, listeners. VVIX 88 up 9 points. VXX 15 3/4 up about 3/4 of a point. UVXY 8.5 also up about 0.5 point. That means all these are up. SVIX has to be down, and that is the case. SVIX at a 37 when we kicked off the show, down 2.5 points, and UVIX 13 3/4. So getting juicy again out there. Let's see really quickly. That's up about 1.5 from last week. Let's see how high did our friend UVIX get yesterday? Looks like around 14 3/4 is where it topped out. So fully a point below that, but still up about 1.5. Shows you how quickly the worm can turn out there in UVIX land. Let's go back out the way we started. Let's go out to CBOE East again. Mr. Flowmaster, a lot to catch people's eyes on and update them on in the markets today. Really quickly, if you have any fun takeaways you want to share from the panel yesterday, have at it. And then B, what's catching your eye out there in the markets today, sir?
I mean, I think it was a great panel and a really nice event out there. You know, Chicago really is the heart of kind of the options trading world, and has been for about 50, 60 years. You know, I think it was great to talk about growth and really what the industry can do together. I think I left thinking more about the crypto ecosystem after our panel. There was a crypto specific panel, including general counsel from CBOE Digital, which is the crypto exchange with margin futures, which we managed to launch on the exact same day that the ETFs were approved. And I happened to see our president that day, and I said, "Was that planned?" And he said, "Not really, but it worked out really well." So. It's definitely kind of there's a lot of action going on in the crypto world, and so we talked about growth and where it might come from this year because a couple of years ago it was retail, last year it was zero DTE, which continues to see plenty of action, but the growth there seems to have kind of tailed off a little bit, and so maybe crypto is going to be kind of the driver of the growth for this year. I hope so. And then, in terms of market conditions, it definitely has become a little bit more volatile. And, we were talking about that big, there've been a couple of very large blocks of VIX calls, and those are, volatility specific trades. And, so that kind of does make people think a little bit, okay, what's going on? I think the macro picture is, starting to get stronger with the rate cuts and the election year and everything else. So, just lots going on, which keeps things interesting.
Very interesting indeed. I'll give you a quick indicator of how just information dense this panel was, listeners. We packed a lot of living into an hour. Henry came with, I think, 30 slides. Greg came with about 10. And we didn't touch a single slide the entire time. We were talking nonstop from the moment we got the word go all the way. I squeezed in every last ounce of juice I could into that hour. So we didn't even touch on a slide. That's how dense it was. So again, you'll be able to hear that for yourselves in a little bit over there in the land of the pro as we keep on going. Let's go out to the Southern Volatility Mecca now. Mr. Meatball, as you were suffering under those horrific Arctic conditions of 32 degrees, what's been catching your eye out there in the market, sir?
I mean, the way the bond market has turned, I'm frankly surprised that markets have held up the way they have, because really since the beginning of the week, the bond market has kind of been in a bit of a free fall, and the bond auctions have not gone very well. The long bond has really taken it on the chin, and that's really been what has driven us softer as the kind of throughout the week. Today, on now obviously recording this on Thursday, we came out of the gate really strong. We've given back all those returns. I'm really actually interested to see if things manage to hold up. And then there's the VIX. I don't know what is causing this term structure to be so tight, but they're expecting a move one way or the other in the volatility index. It is really interesting the way the term structure is set up right now. I can't wait to talk about it on a deep dive in vol views tomorrow. But long story short, the February future is sitting on top of the cash index right now, which tells you that the market is looking for some sort of move, either a complete drop in VIX or a big move higher, one of the two.
Our friend loading up on those Feb 17s, certainly looking kind of interesting right now in hindsight out there. So that's one we'll keep an eye on as well, listeners. We'll get into that more tomorrow on vol views. By the way, our flash poll for that we did during vol views last week, when someone bought $250,000, I believe Henry can confirm this or not, but the single largest individual call buy print, I believe, out there in VIX history. Bought them for 67 cents, 250,000 times. Listeners, we asked you folks, would you rather buy them or sell them? And 57.7% of you said, give me those calls. So you're looking okay right now. 42.3% said sold to you. Obviously, a lot of time between now and February expiration, so we'll see how all that plays out. But a lot of fascinating stuff cooking out there. And speaking of fascinating, once again, we go to the land of the weather shield. I don't care what Uncle Mike says. It's there. Trust me, listeners. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what's been catching your eye out there in a kind of Uncle Mike type of day, then kind of not, then kind of in the middle?
Yeah, I'd say that it's kind of been a kind of Uncle Mike type of year, kind of a not Uncle Mike type of year, kind of in the middle so far in January from what it looks like. It seems like we're about to rally, then something happens, we can't quite do it, but we're really not going down that far either. So just not a lot of movement, but a lot of interesting things happening to make you think you're going to have movement, but it just hasn't really happened. In terms, just to add to what Mark had said a little bit, bonds are selling. And so I don't know if this is necessarily, there's always a reason for it, and the reason is more sellers than buyers, of course, but I don't know if this is anything to do with the recent inflation numbers or the fact that we had a really hot Christmas season or whatever the case may be for some of the numbers that have come out recently. But let's just take a step back. And if we look in late October, between late October and the end of December, there was roughly a 10% move to the upside on IEF, and that's the 7 to 10-year treasuries for U.S. government bonds. TLT, we had a low of 82.42, and TLT is for the longer term. We went up to 100, and so we had more than a 20% move to the upside in bonds over around a 2-month period, and so. Yes, it had fallen and it was lower when that happened, but that's still really fast for a lot of bond buyers to come in. And so when you have big rallies, you're going to get big pullbacks. Now, I've talked about this a little bit on the show before, but the way with which I'm trying to play this right now is that I'm in the bond holdings. I'm really trying to put a good chunk of my client bond holdings into the short-term treasuries. And by doing that, yes, we're in an inverted yield curve, and we're getting more juice from that. We're getting more yield from that because of the fact that as of right now, the 1 to 3 month treasuries, they're paying roughly 5.5% right now, whereas the 10-year, that's paying 4.1%. So don't get me wrong, if God were to tell me that bonds are going to stay the same price for all of eternity, it would be a no-brainer to just keep everything in the 1 to 3 month treasuries. However, God does not tell me about his future bond prices, unfortunately, nor does he tell me about stock prices. So what I'm doing with this is I'm invested quite
Mike,
a bit.
you've got to pray harder than he will.
I'll try.
That's how I know where stocks are going all the time.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll ask for Sebastian's prayer guidance on where the futures of the markets are. But in the meantime, until he'll give me that, the way with which I'm playing this is I'm trying for most of my clients that are in bonds, I'm trying to have money primarily in the shorter term. But you know what? If the bond market stays the same or goes down, I'm smart because of the fact that if the bond prices go down, well, I just wait 1 to 3 months and then I'll get my money back, so to speak, because that's the structure of the bond. If it stays the same, well, I'm still getting a higher yield. I'm smart. Where I'm not smart is if bond values go higher, because of the fact that if we all of a sudden have a rush to buying bonds, I'm not going to make very much on those 1 to 3 month guys. But if I were in longer term bonds, I would make more money. So the way with which I'm playing this is that I'm taking a really small amount of money and I'm buying a call spread on some longer term corporates. I'm using LQD. And in case for some reason we do get a rush to bonds, then where I'll be able to have an upside hedge, for lack of a better term, is by buying through this call spread that I have. If we do get a mad rush to longer term bonds in the buying, I've tried hedging longer term bonds with puts. what I'm doing now, this is working better just because of where volatility is priced in the bond world for what I'm looking at, and it's a lot simpler. So that's where I'm headed right now in the bond world, and that's kind of what's lighting up my tape is the bonds.
Let's see what's lighting up these markets, listeners. Like we said, it's kind of a mixed bag. Depends where you're hanging your hat out there these days, listener. Let's start in VIX, as we are wont to do out there. And VIX, not doing a heck of a lot, quite frankly, out there today. Kind of quiet. Everyone's watching those Feb 17s and waiting for that next shoe to drop out there, listeners. 233,000 contracts on the tape right now. Not a heck of a lot, especially when we consider we've seen north of 700,000 recently at this time of the show, if not more. The ADV getting back up there a bit, up to about 705,000 now. It was about 605 not too long ago, so gaining back about 100,000 in ADV. Doesn't seem like today is going to be a rock'em sock'em robots day, unless, again, some size prints come along. By the way, speaking of that call print, that was the largest outright block print ever in VIX options. So if you're wondering where that falls in the rankings, that's where that falls. SPY, 5.7 million contracts on the tape. So SPY, no slouch today. The ADV, 7.93 million. So again, a little bit of topsy-turvy whipsaw type action. Good for the broad indexes. Same deal, 1.95 million. The ADV, 3.25 million out there right now. Small caps, like we said, they're leading the charge to the dark side today. 614,000 contracts. They're kind of struggling to get halfway to their ADV, which is a little bit north of 1.4 million. We'll see if they get there. And the Qs, as they are wont to do, putting up a lot of numbers early. 2.62 million contracts on the tape for the Qs now. Then they take the rest of the day to leisurely put on the other 0.8 or so, because they get to about 3.44 million out there. So weird the way the Qs trade, but that's kind of how they do it out there. In terms of single names, is it a banger day? The answer is kind of. Cost you 265,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today, listeners. That gets us to our old friend, the artist formerly known as Facebook, now known as Meta, 372.90, up $4.50. So some of our NASDAQ friends popping pretty hard today. Meta, again, 265,000 contracts and the number 10 spot. Number 9, the Amazonians. The Amazonians falling all the way to number 9 today, so very light day for them. They're up about $0.75, trading 152.5. Good for only 295,000 contracts. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know Amazon usually much higher than that, somewhere around number 4 or 3 usually. So number 9, pretty low. It could be indicative of a heavy day for other names, or it could be indicative of a bit of a light day for Amazon. Maybe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B out there today. Then let's go out to number 8. This name now tussling, vying with Apple for the title of most valuable company on the planet. Amazing how you just whisper those two letters, AI, and all of a sudden, bam, Microsoft now the most valuable company on the planet. Amazing the power of those two letters, listeners. $3.90 and about a quarter, up about $0.75 out there today. Looks like they got as high as about $3.93.20, so they've given up $3 of that upside so far today, but still managing to cling to the green. And the number 8 spot, 341,000 contracts on the tape for them. Number 7, man, what a roller coaster ride this name has been on of late. This is Mara, 387,000 contracts. This thing is just a freaking banger. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, just 5 days ago, it was nearly $30. It was like 27 and change. $16 now, cut pretty much in half. Talk about the buy the rumor, sell the fact trade that has gone out there in the Bitcoin and Bitcoin-related products since the ETF approval and in the weeks leading up to it. It's one of the more stark examples of that trade I've seen in recent memory, and you don't have to look much farther than Mara to see it play out right in front of your eyes. I mean, it's off 42% in the past 5 days. Just stunning. And also, the amount of paper that's going up in this name, 387,000 contracts already. The ADV is nearly 600K. This thing's rivaling VIX. I mean, this is crazy town. So, yeah, if you want some crypto-related action in your portfolio, you could do worse than a little bit of Mara. Shh, don't tell Uncle Mike. Don't let him listen. Number 6, going out to a name we don't see very often in our top 10. In fact, probably never really, unless there's a weird corporate action-related thing going on. That's what's happening here for number 6. It's Save, a.k.a. Spirit Airlines, a.k.a. one of the worst airlines I've ever flown. I made the mistake once of booking a Spirit flight by accident. I thought I was booking something else. What a horrible experience it was. They upsold for everything. The overhead compartment. Do you want this seat? Do you want oxygen to breathe? Do you want a seatbelt? It was terrible. And also not a great day for the stock today. Save off $1.75, trading right around 440. Of course, their deal with JetBlue getting blocked. And so market not liking that out there today as a result. If you're wondering what the big print out there is today, again, nearly 400,000 contracts on the tape for them. It's about 38,000 of the Jan 5 puts. No surprise there. Most people looks like they're lifting the offers on those. So folks diving in to get a little bit short after this news. Not a huge surprise, but a lot of paper going up nonetheless out there. Number 5. Again, it's kind of a funky day, listeners. Taiwan Semi. Coming in hot. Number 5, 405,000 contracts, up $7 today, trading 109.75 roughly. So quite the pop out there today. They beat their profit and revenue expectations. So yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. Taiwan Semi, number 5, 405,000 contracts. Number 4, a name you might be familiar with, listeners. We call it around here the fruit company. You might know it as Apple. 186.90, up 4.25. So again, one of these names that's kind of feeling its oats again, even though some of the recent news out there hasn't been great for them in terms of China, in terms of the import bans and everything else, losing their most valuable title to Microsoft, all these things, yet managing to get some of its luster back today, trading a little bit shy of 187 right now. And again, good for 1.07 million. So pretty hefty day when number 4, we're already north of 1 million contracts, listeners. Then we get to number 3. You might be able to guess what number 3 is. It's NVIDIA, 1.11 million. So again, hot day for the top half of our top 10 today. 562 2/3. Man, this thing is lofty. Up 212 today. Got as high as 576, looks like. 576 even. So man, they have given up almost 14 points of that. Wow, what a day for out here for NVIDIA. Number 2. Oh, this is interesting. It's Blood Rival beating it on our list today. AMD saying, hey, look at us. We have AI chips too. 1.3 million on the tape for them. They are now fully selling off. They're off 1.25, trading 158.90. They got as high as 168.60. So they've almost sold off $10 from those highs earlier this session. So again, kind of, a tale of these two markets out here today. And then number 1, in spite of all this chip madness going on today, you know what number 1 is, listeners? Takes a lot to dethrone the king. It's Tesla. Tesla said, you want to put up 1.1 million on NVIDIA, you want to put up 1.3 AMD, Harold my bear kids, 1.66 million contracts on the tape for Tesla. Tesla 615 to the dark side, trading 209.40 right now. Got as high as 217 and about a half. So they have come for this one from the highs as well. It's about $0.50 off the lows right now. My goodness, this is a banger day on the top half of our top 10 most actives, listeners. Also a banger week, as I mentioned, with some of these names popping off this week. I talked about Taiwan Semi earlier. On Tuesday, we had a lot of other financials popping off: Goldman, Morgan, PNC, and IB. Wednesday, we had our buddies Chucky Schwab over there, Citizens, Discover, and Wintrust. And then Thursday, today, aka Northern Trust, so the folks right across the river here. And Friday, Ally and Comerica and Fifth Third Bank. So still a lot of financials popping off this week. If you wanted some hot earnings action, luckily we got it for you, listeners. Hot off the presses from our buddy over there in Orat's Land. Alcoa this morning went into their announcement, 27.18. They were pricing in, get this, 7.1%. They were pricing in a heck of a lot of juice for aluminum. And they did not deliver. They only delivered about 2.9%. They've sold off about 40 cents right now, trading 26.80. So they've moved 38 cents from where they were last night. So yeah, a whole heck of a lot of nothing in good old aluminum out there. Let's see what else we have popping off before the bell here today. Friends Northern Trust across the river there. They were this morning before the bell. Alcoa's last night after the bell. They were about $83, Northern Trust. They were pricing in about 5%. They delivered 1% too, so it looks like a lot of underperformance, at least for right now. That seems to have changed, though. Northern Trust has now sold off. It was about 82.10 when we ran this report. It's about $80.50 right now. So it's sold off about 3%. So catching up to that straddle. Still not quite there, but moving a little bit more than it was initially earlier this morning. If you want to see the rest of these for yourselves, listeners, you know where to go. TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab to see all that fun for yourself. Let's do one more really quickly. Let's go out to another one popping off tomorrow. Our old friends over there in Ally. Not really in the options game anymore, but you know what? we can check them out nonetheless. They are popping off before the bell tomorrow, and they're at $32.50 when we ran this report. They were pricing in $1.68. In the past, they've moved to $1.63. So pricing in a whole heck of a lot of nothing out there in Ally, listeners. And again, let's go out to one more next week just for fun. A name one or two of you might like to trade. This is good old Netflix. 23rd after the bell. $4.80 and a third is where they were trading. They were pricing in, get this, $33. In the past, they've moved $57.30. So not quite cutting their straddle in half, but pretty freaking close. Man, that's a lot of juice off the top. That might be, looking here right now, that is the largest change from recent moves versus what they're implying right now that we have in our report here. So wow, that's a big change out there in Netflix. Is Netflix merit a much lower vol level? I guess we'll find out next week. One more after the bell on the 24th. This is Tesla, just talking about them. This shows you how much a difference a few minutes makes. They were at 215.5 when we ran this report earlier this morning. Obviously a wee bit lower now, trading right around 210. And they were pricing in $13. In the past, they've moved $15, so about $2 off the top here. So maybe we're backing off that a little bit. Last cycle was more juice all the time, and it seemed to work out. This cycle, maybe so far, the answer is less juice. And that is also being borne out in our results, listeners. The season report right now, with a whopping 23 names reporting, so take this number with a huge grain of salt. 86% right now, so it's dropped from about 119 down to 86%. So right now, underperformance, the name of the game. Will that continue? We shall find out as we keep on rolling into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get weird. Let's get wild. Let's unleash the FLOWMASTER if he has recovered from his mad day of travel to frigid Chicago. Also, he got a little fresh in the panel. I had to rough him up a little bit, listeners, so he looks a little bit worse for wear today. Luckily, this is not a video show out here, listeners. But Mr. FLOWMASTER, seems like your eye has been drawn back to one of our favorites, one of our listeners' favorites. This is Cave, ticker symbol CVE, a.k.a. Synovus Energy. You weren't on the show with us last week, but we had listeners chiming in with all sorts of theories. Also, a lot of people keeping an eye on that OI. It has continued to grow. Looks like so far, at least, we talked about this before, listeners, doesn't seem like the upside has materialized that these folks want. They were loading up on the Feb 17s. The stock is off about $1.50 or nearly 9% over the past 5 days, trading $14.87 now, so shy of a 15 handle. When they started putting these on, obviously the stock was much higher. There was some speculation. I'm not sure if you're aware, Mr. FLOWMASTER. There was some speculation. I believe it was last Friday. There was some hearing being held in some provincial area of Canada about a pipeline to approve it or not. A lot of people were speculating that maybe this was lined up with that. If that was the case, it has not materialized so far in terms of the upside that they were looking for. But intriguing stuff. What's continuing to catch your eye out there in Synovus Energy, sir?
And we were talking about this one before, and today's trade is nothing huge. It's just a 10,000 lot of the Feb 15 calls bought. Actually, they bought 99.99. Maybe they were trying to stay right underneath somebody's 10,000 minimum threshold on some sort of an order blotter. But they paid up to 70 cents for 10,000 of the Feb 15 calls. Those are opening. And as you said, the stock's down a little bit over the last week at 14.74 when that printed. But I did remember we'd been talking about it before. And, with 80,000 of Feb 17 calls open, and, we saw those were basically mostly from buyers. And the fact that earnings are right before these expire, I might actually put on some sort of a small long trade in this because the straddle's pricing at about 10% right now, and I'm not a pro at fundamental analysis, but most of the write-ups that I saw said it's kind of a fairly valued energy company. So I think this is might be a specific earnings trade, whether it's about some sort of catalyst like pipeline or something else. I think I would want to lean long on this one. So, these building positions, it's a little different than some of the fast money, aggressive sweeps that we see. Those can be good for a quick trade, but I really do also like to look for this consistent, repeat buying that's creating new open interest.
Yeah, we dug into these a little bit on Options Oddities last week, and you're right, 81,000 open on this strike now, so they're still coming for size. On the plus side, listeners, if you were intrigued by these before, you didn't like the price levels, they were buying around 70 cents. They have been cut more than in half now, so you can get a 50% plus discount on these calls if you are so intrigued. I'm kind of with you, Mr. Flowmaster. I liked the way they lined up with earnings. That seemed to make a little bit more sense to me. This pipeline thing, people were kind of thrown out of left field. In fact, I just looked it up. It was the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Apparently, it received the approval that they were looking for last week. Doesn't seem to be reflected in the stock. So if that's what people were looking for with this trade, they're going to be deeply disappointed. So my initial speculation was along your lines, Mr. Flowmaster, because it lines up so perfectly with earnings that this was an earnings-driven trade. It does seem like that. The fact that they've gotten the approval and the flow keeps coming in, and even though it has sold off, does seem like that is the case. Mr. Meatball, sir, we've had a couple of weeks to chew on these now. What are your thoughts on this continued upside love in the CVE, sir?
I mean, they love buying these calls, and I have yet to see them work. Look at the 17s they bought; those are down to 15 cents. So, I'm not sure what they're up to, but it definitely looks a little interesting. Normally they get out after they're wrong for a day or two. This time they have not. So. I'm with Henry. Might be worth a shot. The 16 calls are 30 cents. Those might be worth picking up.
Yeah, somebody also gobbling up, like we said, 15s today. So if you like that 70-cent price point, you can get the 15s for those now. So you get a whole 2 strikes better. Listeners out there, this is an intriguing one. Certainly one to keep an eye on. Do you need to run out and do it right now? Probably not, but it's certainly an intriguing one nonetheless. Certainly if you were driven by all this pipeline being a catalyst, that is clearly not the case. So something else afoot out here in Cave as we keep on rolling. The flip side of the trade we were just talking about, we said Spirit Airlines is in our top 10 most actives today. Well, the other half of that deal was JetBlue, a ticker symbol JBLU, trading $4.92, up about a quarter, about 5%. So they're not shelling out for Spirit, so I guess that's the bonus for their stock at the end of the day. Let's see. I'm talking about JetBlue in forever either. JetBlue a year ago was $8.50. So I won't say how the mighty have fallen, how the regional airline has fallen. I'm not sure if they were ever quite mighty. Their high for the year came $9.50. Looks like that came actually in July. So they had a good run for the first half of the year, and then they pretty much gave it all up. By Halloween, they got down to $3.42. So since Halloween, they recovered about $1.50. I guess you can look at it that way. But on the year, it's still pretty rough, off 42% or about $3.50. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what did you spot out there in JetBlue today?
The one more thing on Synovus is that put call skew is kinked to the upside also in February. So it's that's maybe a little bit more of an advanced topic, but people talk about the vol smile, and when it kinks to the upside, it is a speculative sign. It's kind of a side effect of the call buying there. So in JetBlue, I've been long this stock for a while, and it certainly hasn't made me any money. I just kind of think of it as it's an airline that seems to be around. It has a pretty solid presence in New York, and as that deal broke, right, it was the deal to buy Spirit was blocked by the Trade Commission. So that was, good for JetBlue and obviously very bad for Spirit. I think there's plenty of people thinking Spirit might not make it. But we just saw today a buyer at 3,000 of the Feb 2nd. So this is, pretty short dated. Feb 2nd, 5.5 strike calls when the stock was $4.83. And so, that's not a huge trade, but I did go and dig around. And one thing I looked at in Trade Alert, we have the ability to show kind of the accumulation of open interest over a multi-day period. So over the last 5 trading days, we've seen about 23,000 of the Jan 5.5 calls opened and almost 20,000 of the Feb 2nd 6 strike calls. And so now this is the Feb 2nd 5.5 strike calls. So this just kind of looks like, directionally bullish, pretty short dated activity, basically for the stock to kind of bounce back up. I think when it was announced that the deal was off, stock jumped up almost to $6, but it didn't hold for very long.
And Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. Are you a fan of this JetBlue playing the other side of the Spirit deal? And what are your thoughts on these Feb 5.5s expiring on the 2nd, so in the weeklies?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting play, short dated, looking for a move. JetBlue has gotten absolutely throttled. So, it would make sense to get a little bit of maybe a rebound. I don't know that not merging with Spirit is that bad of a thing for them. And Mark, I'm with you on Spirit. So I get it. It's not my kind of play, but I get why you would do it.
I got some more paper here, but anything lighten up your tape in the land of the pit you want to share with our listeners, sir?
Yeah, we have some BP calls going up today. And there's been this NVIDIA roller that's been interesting. So they were long the 460 calls in Feb, sold them, took all of the money they received and bought the 500s 30,000 times. Then yesterday, they sold their 30,000 500s to buy 30,000 of the 530s. So really interesting long play in NVIDIA, someone using in the money options as a stock replacement to go long a ton of NVIDIA over the last couple of days. I don't know. Let me see if they've done anything today. Have they rolled again or done anything else? I will tell you, NVIDIA definitely off the highs of the day. Nope, no big roll today. So they're just sitting along the 530 calls. I think that trader is interesting.
That dude's certainly sitting on some cash out there. 460s he started with. Yeah, that's a good 100 handles in the money. There are worse ways to make a living. And you talking about these Feb 35s and BPs that was catching your eye out there today?
Yeah, those were interesting. They bought about 15,000 of them. BP has just gone straight down. Might be a little bit of trying to find a floor.
Trying to find a floor, indeed. They paid 55 cents roughly for these things 10,000 times this morning, listeners out there in BP. Let's see. We could hit on this one, or we could do some... Yeah, let's do this really quickly. Let's get out to one of our old friends, listeners. This is Bumble. You know the deal with Bumble. Ladies looking for love out there, and someone looking to harvest a lot of put premium. They've been selling puts in this thing for over a year now, and doing it for size. And it's worked out pretty well, which is interesting because on the year, Bumble is off nearly $10 or 41%, trading $13.86 right now. You look at that chart, it doesn't scream, hey, that's a great time to be selling puts out here and make a bunch of money, but they've been pretty deft with it, and it has worked out pretty well. Let's break down a couple of them really quickly, and then we'll get to today's paper. Back in August, our August 23rd show, we talked about them coming in, assuming it's the same player, listeners, could be related paper. 15,000 of the set 15 puts for 28 cents. They did another 7,000, so they did a total of 22,000. The stock closed at $15.60. This is the closest they've gotten. The stock at the time when they sold these was about $16.60. So those puts were still open. They pocketed 420, obviously on the big chunk, and roughly half of that on the other 7,000 lot. Back to November 13th, they came back again. This time the FLOWMASTER found these 24,400 of the 11 puts that they sold expiring on the 8th. So they went into the weeklies this time, which is kind of rare for them. They sold these for 11 cents. So this is not their best sale. The stock closed at $14.04 on this one. So those puts were still open. So they kept all of that 11 cents. So that's $270,000. So they are 2 for 2 here, if we can assume this is the same player. And then coming back in for size again today, go big or go home. Someone selling nearly 31,000 of the March, again in the weeklies, expiring on the 1st, the 10.5 puts. So they're getting a little out of the money again, which is interesting. $3 is a long way for them to go. If it is the same player. The stock right now, actually, when they sold these, the stock was $13.5. So the stock has rallied 30 cents since then. They sold these for 12 cents. So again, not their best sale, but they did it for size. Again, 31,000 times. There are earnings, though, between now and March expiration, February 21st. So that could gum these works up a little bit. Mr. Flowmaster, we've been talking about Bumble puts for a long time. It looks like they're back for size, sir. What say you out here in Bumble?
Yeah, that has been a name, and I think I've been in it. I don't know if I still have it on right now or not, but I was long stock and short a few calls on it, and just kind of trying to play around with it. I think that this is the kind of flow we've seen in the past, and I think I might have mentioned it. It feels like a Warren Buffett style. Like, I'm going to sell so many puts that if the stock tanks, I'm just going to take the stock, and I like it. I like to see these line in the sand put sales. I take it as somebody's done their homework. It doesn't mean bad things can't happen, but that makes me kind of comfortable with that.
Certainly should be comfortable with the amount of money they pocketed, because I'm hard-pressed to think of another consistently profitable long-term put seller like we've seen this one in Bumble. So keep an eye on these, listeners, as we keep an eye on what you folks have up your sleeves, a little bit of the old mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, everybody, let me run through a couple of these really quickly. We got a bunch of polls that have been going on. I told you about the Feb 17s, the flash poll for vol viewers already. Last week, our question of the week was quite simply, will the S close positive on the year? 73.3% of you chose heck yes, and 5% choosing heck no. Who cares? I'm in crypto. 21.7% saying heck no. So the most bullish I've seen our audience maybe ever, which maybe is a little unnerving to me. You folks usually fade all these rallies, so that's kind of a little interesting to me. We also asked you this week another little flash poll. Heading into that panel, what should myself and the Flowmaster and everybody else, what should we talk about? And you folks overwhelmingly chose, 65% said you got to talk about zero DTE. That should be the focus of the panel. That was 65%, followed by about 18% for the crypto options explosion, about 15% for options volume overall explosion, and a few percent for others. And then our actual question of the week, which I want Uncle Mike to weigh in on. It's a new year, new time to revisit your options trading arsenal. Which options strategy do you anticipate using the most throughout 2024? Again, we tried to squeeze as many as we could into 4 choices. If you don't see your choice, write it in. We can talk about it here if it's interesting. Again, 4 choices: long calls, long puts, or verticals in either direction. Covered calls, short puts, or again, verticals in either direction. Straddles, strangles, or flies, or calendars/diagonals. Uncle Mike, if you have a vote in this, if you have a strategy you see yourself using a lot this year, have at it. And then B, which way do you think our audience is going?
Well, I think that the simple way to go, if you keep things vertical, things tend to be a little bit simpler. However, with the VIX getting a little bit lower, I'm not going to lie, I'm tempted by going the diagonal route in some ways. But for now, I'm going to stick with verticals, and but I could get a little diagonal as the months go on.
Which way do you think our audience is going?
I think they'll go with diagonal. We have a diagonal leaning audience, I believe.
Really? Got the hardcores slinging diagonals out there. Okay, interesting. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. If you have a preference, have at it. And then B, more importantly, what's our audience up to?
All right, what are my options?
Long call, long put or vertical. Covered calls, short put or vertical. Straddle, strangle, or butterfly, or calendar/diagonal.
Ooh, I'm a butterfly guy, as you know. But I'm going to say they're going to go long call.
Interesting. So you choose the straddle, strangle, butterfly. You thinking they're going long call. Mr. Flowmaster, you get the final word. What are you feeling? What's our audience up to?
I just actually ran some data this morning because, as you know,
no cheating with actual numbers, sir.
Well, too late. I'm going to say vertical. And that's what I would go with too. Verticals all the way.
Long verticals? Far. So the long verticals? Okay. And you are correct, sir. 40.5% choosing the long call or long put or the vertical therein. So a lot of you folks getting long some premium right now. The covered call, short put, vertical coming in number 2, 29.7%. Can never fault that one. 21.6% coming in for the straddles, strangles, and flies. Uncle Mike getting a little optimistic. Only 8.1% of our audience going for the calendars or a diagonal. I kind of knew when we threw that out there that was going to be a low percentage getter. But Uncle Mike, he was feeling a little bit of diagonals. Are you folks feeling them? If so, you've got about a couple of days left in our question of the week to bump those numbers up a little bit on the diagonal side as we keep going around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, we'll start with you, sir. Take us home. What are you keeping an eye on until the Monday show?
Well, I wanted this market to actually make a move, a larger move besides just a little bit up and a little bit down. So watching that as well as watching to see how does this TSM play out? It was interesting, the fact that you got the 7% move today, seeing if we get some continuation or a little bit of pullback on it.
Yeah, as Uncle Mike alluded to, markets turning a little bit, slightly more green. S&P up about a third now, NASDAQ up about 3/4. And the Dow now turning green as well, up about 0.05%. Our VIX friend selling off a little bit, down about 14 2/3. It was about 14 3/4 when we kicked off the show. So not a huge move, but a little bit of green back on the screen, a little bit of red back on the vol screen. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until the Monday show?
Well, we still got some earnings tomorrow morning. We start a big earnings week next week. And I think we've got a few more Fed speakers. They've been moving things around a lot. And of course, we're going to watch the bond market because that's going to tell us what the market is going to do.
My favorite, the Fed speakers. You know my thoughts on that. Mr. Flowmaster, last but not least, sir, what are you keeping an eye on until the Monday show, or in your case, the Thursday show?
So a few things. That VIX position is very large. I think with futures around here, they're up around $8 or $9 million already. That's the power of a 250,000 contract position with a multiplier of 100. So I will be keeping a close eye on that. I set a few alerts yesterday, actually, when I was with you in Chicago, to get prints when that thing went over $1. Remember, they paid 67 cents for it, and it did print over $1 for a while yesterday. It's back down to around 95 cents right now. Here's a good one, actually. So today, the bell ringing on the CBOE floor is being done by Franklin Templeton, who has a Bitcoin ETF being listed. I think the ticker is EZBC, and they are doing it by hologram. So I'll see if I can find the link to the video once it's recorded, because it's just kind of a wild futuristic concept. We'll have holographic bell ringings, which Kathy Clay mentioned yesterday at STAC on during her fireside chat. So that's that one. That's a unique one. So look for that link.
Yeah, I saw Kathy yesterday. She was very excited about the holograms. So that's where we are, listeners. It's officially the future now when you list your Bitcoin ETF via hologram. That's the world we are all in. Unfortunately, that music means we are not in the world of the option block, I should say. At least not anymore. We'll be back, of course, on Monday. I'll be back in a little bit with Carly Garner to talk all the madness going on in the futures options markets on TWIFO. So if you're listening live, stay tuned in there. Of course, if you want to join us for the fun on the pro, join the live, get options oddities, get pro Q&As, maybe get that fun panel we did yesterday and a whole bunch more giveaways. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro, the place to go to learn more. And Uncle Mike, where should they go if they want to learn how to get the Uncle Mike mobile in their front yard?
Head to stcharleswealth.com, set up an appointment with me, and follow me on Twitter. Try to put out some content from time to time, and would love to have a conversation with any of our audience members.
There you go. Don't look for him at Uncle Mike, though. He is at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW, all one word, on the old Twitters. And Mr. Meatball, if they follow you on the old Twitter/X, what can they find there?
Yeah, come to optionpit.com. We're putting out valuable information for you every single day around volatility and trading, VIX, SPX, the whole 9 yards. Optionpit.com. Read my trader's edge.
There you go. Check them out, optionpit.com. And Mr. Flowmaster, if they want to check out that link to the holographic opening or anything else, where should they go? What should they do?
So you can always go to SEBO.com/RMA for trials and information on our services. But I will make sure I post that link on the Option Alert Twitter handle, and I'll tag you so that you can retweet it. So we can still call it tweets if it's an X, and that'll be it.
There you go. Check them out. Follow them on the Option Alert so you can get, or we'll retweet it as well. So you could see that fun holographic link, and of course, SEBO.com/RMA for all those goodies we're talking about here throughout the show. You can dig into the Eye of Sauron for yourselves and a whole bunch more. We're going to get on out of here. Back again in a little bit for TWIFO. Then back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, talking a whole mess of vol on vol views. After that, exclusively for you pro cats and kittens, coming back for a little bit of options oddities. Then we're back again on Monday, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cbo.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.